Now to our top story, and thousands of migrants unlawfully living in the UK will be offered up to £3,000 to voluntarily move to Rwanda. That's under new legislation proposed by the government, which aims to bypass the legal challenges faced by that original deportation scheme by making relocation a choice.
Under the new deal agreed with Rwanda earlier this year, migrants will receive housing and support when they arrive in the African country, but only if they go there voluntarily. Asylum seekers who refuse the financial incentive will be unable to officially work or claim benefits in the UK.
Well, joining us now is immigration lawyer Ivon Sampsons. Ivon, have you ever heard such a peculiar thing as this? A government paying someone who's entered their country, one assumes illegally, if they're not actually being granted asylum here, money to then go and live in another country? Hi, Ivon. Can you hear us?
I can hear you perfectly well. Thank you. Hi, Kevin.
Hi.
Hello. Hi, Ivon. Yeah, so I was just saying, this is rather unprecedented, isn't it? They can't get a single plane off the ground due to all the legal objections to the once much fated Rwanda scheme. And so now they're going to actually give money to people who have come from wherever in the world to go and relocate to another country. This is quite bizarre.
Well, such schemes have been running for many years, actually. And most years you get around about 15 or 20,000 people taking up these schemes. The difference with the Rwanda scheme is that we've got people who've been rejected, have their asylum cases rejected, but we can't send them back to their own country because there's problems with identity, documents, or indeed their country might not be willing to accept them. So they're essentially stuck here. And it's a bit different from the other Rwanda scheme that the government tried to implement, which the courts have said that you can't send it to Rwanda because it's not safe there. Now, there's a moral argument to this. Is it right to offer money to people to go to a country which the court said is not safe? The Joint Committee on Human Rights in Parliament says it's not safe. Amnesty International, Human Rights Watch, and the UNCHR have said it's not safe. So there is an argument, is it morally right to do that, offer money to people? But it won't work unless there's also a stick. You can offer carrots to send people money, give people money to go leave the country. But many countries detain asylum seekers who have had their asylum cases rejected. And I've always advocated for this, that if you've had your asylum case rejected and you haven't got identity documents of who you actually are, there is an argument to put them into some sort of detention.
The thing is, Ivan, I kind of object to this as a British taxpayer. I don't want the government giving illegal migrants thousands of pounds to go to another country. Why can't they just be taken to another country? They arrived here illegally. We've got a nice place where you can go. You're off to Rwanda and you're not getting any money from British taxpayers. How about that as a compromise?
Well, the courts have said the government can do that. The Supreme Court.
Yeah, but I don't want to do that, and nor will millions of British taxpayers. The government is being rather sort of slap happy with our money, I would suggest.
Kevin, it's actually cheaper to do that than to continue for people to continue to live here, and we've got to provide support. And this is the other thing. In my experience, in 20 years, I've been practicing immigration law here. When you allow people to stay here over a long period of time, what happens is that they end up in relationships, having children, and it makes it even harder to remove people because of their human rights, having formed a family life here. So these schemes can work if, once someone's rejected, they're offered immediately to people. It can work, but remember that we don't know what Rwanda's getting out of this, and the government haven't told us that. What are we paying Rwanda to take these people? We might be paying the individuals £3,000, but what are they paying Rwanda? What's the true cost?
Right.
And what are the numbers
Ivan, we're with Isabel Oakeshott, who's busting to get a question into.
I am. I've got 2 points to make, really. I mean, how about first point? Here's an idea. You don't actually let them come here in the first place. I think you make a really good point about the longer you let people stay here, the more likely they are to establish ties, which then make it even harder for us to remove them. But look, this kind of complicated thing Doesn't need to be that complicated. You just stop the boats from coming here in the first place. The second thing I wanted to pick up on is your very excellent point about what is Rwanda getting out of this. And I don't think enough questions are actually being asked about our curious relationship with Rwanda, which has many faults in it. We've been focused on its record for safety. Is it a nice enough place for people to be deported? But Rwanda is up to all sorts of pretty dubious and murky things in relation to its neighbour, the Democratic Republic of Congo. I think the Democratic Republic of Congo would have quite a lot to say about Rwanda's role in fueling terrorism over there. So this is not a country that we should necessarily be shoving a load of hard-earned British taxpayers' money at. And that £3,000, most people will have to work about 300 hours to raise that amount of money. You know, think of it in terms of what taxpayers have to do to create enough money to send one person home. And to me, I just think this scheme is absolutely bananas.
By the way, Ivan, well, have you know, you say that there are a lot of bodies that have said that Rwanda's not a safe place. But let me tell you, 650 British MPs took a vote on it. And even though most of them couldn't point to Rwanda on a map, they voted that it's safe. So what do you have to say about that?
Well, you can call, black white or white black, and if you're Parliament and you're sovereign and the will of Parliament, and talk to Jacob Rees-Mogg about this. Parliament's supreme. It can do anything it wants. It can actually say Rwanda's safe, and hey presto, it's safe. No, you've got to look at the evidence, and the evidence points to an overwhelming conclusion. It's not a safe country. It's run by a dictator who arbitrarily detains people. There's extrajudicial killings by Paul Kagame. You stand in Rwanda, Kevin, with a flag, with a banner which says Paul Kagame out. Let's see what happens to you. Well, no, it's not a safe country.
I'm being facetious. I thought that vote was the most ridiculous thing I've ever seen in Parliament, and that's saying something.
Yeah, I was going to say, I don't think many people who might end up going to Rwanda who've been illegally, who illegally came here are going to join politics in that country, but there you are. But what strikes me is whatever the government tries to do, whatever the government thinks would be a great deterrent, and you're talking about putting people whose asylum has been denied into detention, there's always going to be some sort of legal contest. It is as predictable as night following day. And I think, how do we stop all this? When does this end? You know, the Bibi Stockholm wasn't good enough for a lot of people who were supposed to be going there. They had lawyers representing them saying they don't like being on the water, it's bad for their mental health, they're terrified and all the rest of it. So I'm sure that there won't be a single migrant, if any such detention centre existed, who would happily go there and not have some sort of legal representation to avoid that. You're even seeing in terms of the accommodation that they're giving 3-star, 4-star hotels. That isn't always good enough for them either. And so I just wonder, how on earth is the government supposed to unpick what is one of the biggest challenges of our time? We're not the only country facing it, without actually at some point breaking international law.
Isabel's absolutely right what she said. You see, the UK Border Force is dysfunctional. Their own inspector said that. And there's loads of reports, and I love to read them, that have been suppressed by the government. No, our borders are not secure. We don't have secure borders. And until we do, we're going to get a flow of people coming across. We've got to work with our neighbours across the Channel. We've got to work with the French and the EU and have a treaty which allows us to return people that irregularly enter the UK on small boats. And until we do, they will keep coming.
Yeah, the problem I have with this is the conditions that someone like the EU wants in return for signing such a treaty is that we have to agree automatically to take a certain quotient of all of the migrants entering the EU. So we're essentially giving up control of our own borders to an organisation that the people of Britain democratically voted to no longer be part of. They can't control their frontiers, that's for sure. But, I found out the other day that Greece is actually turning boats around. It's not being widely reported, but Greece are now intercepting boats.
And Belgium did as well.
And sending them back.
Other countries do this, and they do it very effectively. And
what in law says we can't do this? That's what I want to know.
The idea that this should be completely impossible is absurd. We should simply do it and see what the consequences are. And I bet you anything, the sky would not fall in. With this £3,000 thing, all we are doing is adding yet another pull factor.
Yeah. And you know, the European Court of Human Rights, what we should do, we are the country that sort of worships the ECHR. Everything they say, we go, oh yes, oh we won't take the plea. Other countries in Europe, Germany, France, just completely ignore the ECHR. Yeah. We should try that.
Well, we've got to comply with our international treaty obligations, and that's the laws of UNCLOS and SOLAS, and this is international treaty obligations.
We don't have to, Ivan, we don't have to. This is the sort of nonsense that's got us into this mess.
We either sign up to
these ridiculous, you know, international agreements. Other countries, if they don't like them, they just ignore them, and that's what we should do.
Yeah.
Anyway, Ivan, good to talk to you as always, mate. Ivon Sampson, the immigration lawyer.